Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Good evening, dear friends. I am your headmister, Stefan Gearhart.
And I am your co-mister, the man with no name, Lance Wayne.
And we are the Misters of the Dark.
Join us as we discuss everything from horror books, films,
and even pretty princesses. Join us every other Tuesday in our dilapidated mansion. You never know what's going to happen next.
Only on the Fearscape Media Network.
That's a good laugh.
Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basements may contain graphic, violent, vulgar, or explicit content not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey listeners, welcome back to Ghosts in the Attic, Bodies in the Basement. I'm Anna.
And I'm Lindsay, and we're back.
Yeah, sorry about that, stroking out on you, literally.
Literally.
Because, you know, Oklahoma heat is not to be trifled with, and I don't know what the fuck I was thinking being an Irish person this pale going outside for extended periods of time.
Right? But I am glad that you are okay.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I still have brain frog. See, that's my problem. I have brain fog almost to the level I had, but if not more so than when I was pregnant. So that's super fun, feeling absolutely dumb as shit all the time. Like, you walk into a room typically with ADD and you're like, what am I here for? You walk into a room with ADD after having some sort of stroke and you're like, no, really, why am I here?
What? Who am I?
What was I gonna say? Like, I forgot a sentence mid-sentence. Like, it was a thing the other day. It was really interesting. So to say I'm special right now, like a special case of dumb, is like the bottom of the totem pole. I could go on for days about how my brain is not working, but I'm gonna try to get through today's episode like normal. Yay, fun.
Lucky for us, it is a book club episode, so those are a little bit easier on the brain.
Well, until you have to remember what the hell it was, and thankfully I took notes, so
Yeah,
yay
right?
me.
Especially, I've been on a really big Audible kick lately, and so I've read several books since I read this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm listening to a cozy mystery series, so it's basically like no cursing, not at all, in the entire book series. It's kind of weird.
Interesting.
But it's about witches, so it's kind of spooky and fun. And
Is it the set that you told me about?
Yeah, the Torrent Witches. It's really good. But I'm on book 6 or something out of 10. It's something to mundanely listen to while I'm doing my tasks at work. You know, it's just something to pass the time between epic reads. It's not to say it's bad. It's just not what I typically listen to.
Yeah,
It's like
I get
a
that.
Hallmark movie, but book form and witchy.
Nice. I'm currently reading Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, who wrote Perks of Being a Wallflower, and this is nothing like Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's creepy, and It's amazing. I'm loving it. And it's like, I'm on chapter 45 and still have 8 hours left on 2 times speed.
Well, damn.
So there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
But anyways.
I feel that. I've been trying to write recently. Hello. And then I was like, oh, this will be a great idea. And then I forgot what the fuck I wrote in the first book. So now I have to go through and read the entire first book to make sure I'm not fucking everything up for the second book. You
Right,
know,
like a character walks in who died early on or something.
writer's life. But yeah, like you might have to proofread the shit out of this because who knows.
Well, I'm not going to remember if you mean me literally proofreading.
Yeah, you literally.
I'm not going to remember. I've read the dedication how many times?
Right? Maybe once.
But you mentioned writing, and it's funny that you do, because actually, while I was listening to this book, which, by the way, we never said it, it's I Eat Men Like Air.
Yes.
By who's the author?
By Alice Berman.
Alice Berman. But something about the writing style or something, I wrote a bunch of just like random stuff while I was listening to it, because my brain, like when you're, especially when you're listening to stuff, but it happens when you're physically reading a book too, your brain starts like picking up those patterns.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that, and like my brain just
like
would narrate everything.
Yeah, it's almost like musing you. Yeah.
So that brings us to our book, though, which is I Eat Men Like Air, like we just said, by Alice Berman. And as always, even though we hope you guys read it before you come and listen to this.
By the way, if we even told you it was a thing, because like who fucking knows with us?
We did,
Oh,
because it
yay
is in the
for
show
us.
notes. Except for one of the times, it just says currently reading, and it's just blank.
Currently reading nothing.
I can't remember if it was completely blank or was it I Eat Men Like Air by, and then I never put the author's name.
Listen, everybody has Google, and if we put nothing down, they could just assume we're not reading anything. So there's that.
But as we told you guys, we've actually been reading quite a bit. But so yeah, so we are going to read. Sorry, I just noticed we got this for free on Audible.
It was free on Audible.
It is now $30 on Audible.
Sorry, listeners, when we started this book months ago, it was completely free to download.
Why is it $30?
No shit.
Audible's never going to sponsor us because we're over here talking shit.
Audible's not sponsoring anyone like they used to, which is bunk, but like whatever.
They should. They really sponsor us.
should.
We do all of our book clubs on Audible and all of our other reading too.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Listen, I don't have time to physically sit down and read a book.
Me either. I put my earbuds in. I put my earbuds in and do stuff around the house.
Yup. So we have a synopsis for you, but like we always tell you, there will be spoilers. So if you don't want that, get the fuck out of here, read the book, and come back.
Yes, exactly. So here's the synopsis off of Amazon. A lavish, debauched weekend to celebrate an upcoming wedding devolves into a murder scene. With the snow falling fast on a New Hampshire mansion, 7 20-somethings gather for a weekend that will change their lives irrevocably. The extravagant trip to celebrate Will and Jessica's upcoming nuptials brings together a cast of characters who know each other from Ivy League schools and childhood Upper East Side haunts. There is Lulu, an LA-based Instagram influencer, Maxie, a former Park Avenue princess, now Midwestern housewife, Yael, an ER doctor from Ohio, Rob, a colorless Wall Street trader, Will, a morality-obsessed lawyer, Jessica, Will's perfectionist bride-to-be, and Alex Sable, a lawless pleasure seeker with refined tastes. Alex, son of a billionaire hedge fund scion, was the sole witness against his classmate in a serial rape trial 15 years ago, the notoriety of which follows Alex everywhere. By Will and Jessica's wedding day, 4 months later, Alex Sable would be dead in that same house in a bathtub filled with his blood. Can Tyler Carroll, a well-known podcast reporter determined to pry his way into their closed-door world, sift through the secrets that connect the 7 in a web? As Tyler attempts to find the truth behind the months leading up to Alex Sable's dramatic death, he follows the bridal party whose lives have spiraled in wildly different directions, bringing them to a fateful night. The narration by Elizabeth Evans pushes the tangled tale forward as she gracefully performs multiple characters, creating a clear picture of chaos and emotion. Told in dual timelines, the months leading up to the wedding and the investigation thereafter, I Eat Men Like Air is a riveting look at the unraveling of a friend group, punctured by violence and a chilling depiction of the rage that festered when it's kept secret. And it says, note, I Eat Men Like Air contains mature and sensitive themes.
And it's triggery as fuck. Let me just say that whenever I first came across this under the free version, which is now $30, but whenever I first came across this, I had no idea what to expect with I Eat Men Like Air. Initially, the cover stood out to me, and the title stood out to me, and my curiosity was piqued. But then whenever I really read the synopsis, I was like, wait a minute, true crime and a podcaster. Hello. I mean, and it's a book, so like we obviously had to cover this. I mean, just saying,
Yes.
it covers all of our bases, like us as individuals, podcasters, writers, and why did Microsoft
True crime.
Word just open up on its own? Sorry, like
It says you're gonna write right now.
right, like my computer just opened Microsoft Word without being asked to. Okay, thanks, no thanks. Anyway,
Your computer's doing a lot of wonky stuff right now.
my computer has problems. I need a new one, but like I spilled wine on the last one, so this is what's up. Like
I forgot about that. I think we were recording when that happened.
we were, and it died. It straight up died, and now I have a
Right in the middle of
computer.
recording. Yeah. I remember that.
And well, what happened was a fly tried to go in my mouth, and then shit went awry. But anywho, with us being writers, with us being podcasters, and us being obsessed with true crime, this made perfect sense for us to cover as a book.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but after the first chapter, I was intrigued. A few chapters later, I was hooked. And there's too many characters to keep up with, to be perfectly honest. If that's not your thing.
Yeah, I had a hard time kind of keeping track of them until much later in the story because it starts focusing on just a couple.
Yeah, if that's not your thing, like multiple narrations, this is not going to be the book for you at all.
I have to say, though, the narrator for Audible, like I know it said it in the synopsis on Amazon, but I'm going to tell you as somebody who listened to it, those characters are individual people, even though it's all her.
They had their own unique voices.
Which
like,
a lot of Audible
literally.
narrators do that, but like I could picture each one of them in my head perfectly, and that was their own unique voice. In fact, I was even thinking earlier, because I texted Anna whenever I was reading it, and I said Lulu was, what's her name, Anna Taylor-Joy?
Yeah. I pictured her more like an Olsen twin, to be perfectly fucking honest.
See, there's somebody else in my head that I also keep picturing. It's like it goes back and forth, but I can't figure out who the other one is.
Like, just the way she is in the book screams Mary-Kate Olsen to me.
See, I see more Anna Taylor-Joy, but then I was like, I can even picture her voice. And then I realized I'm probably actually picturing her voice in the Audible.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah. But like, I can see her in my head. I cannot. I mean, Anna Taylor-Joy half the time. And then another half, there's somebody else I cannot put my finger on. So if y'all have listened to this, let me know who you think Lulu is. I think Alex would probably be Ian Somerhalder.
See, I don't know. I feel like Alex is the ultimate douchebag. So I feel like he's the guy that played Dexter on the Dexter TV show, because he just looks like a complete dick face. And no offense to him, it's his face. He can't help it. But when you think of a tool, that's who I think of, is the guy.
But Ian Somerhalder, though, like, look at Damon.
I mean, yeah, but like,
I love Damon.
Damon's a complete twisted fuck, but at least he's cute. Like, I imagine Alex very unattractive.
But isn't Alex supposed to be super handsome? That's part of his appeal?
According to Rob. I mean, Rob's like obsessed with him. Yeah, he's like completely obsessed with him and wants to be him, which is like a whole nother level of weird. But
which I did like the character development towards the end with Rob. I know we're jumping all around, but Rob kind of gets set free after Alex dies.
Don't they all, though? Which is really kind of fucked, because when the story begins, I mean, this Audible book is going to have you obsessed until you finish it. I mean, just straight up.
Yes,
that's
yeah.
where it's at. But, I mean, wow, I couldn't stop. The characters are so well written. I mean, there are a bunch of 20-somethings living beyond our means, like mine and
except
yours,
for, is it Rob who's actually poor?
Well, I wouldn't say he's poor. He's upper middle class, but
by comparison,
compared to these people who have private jets, like
and so he tries
like
desperately to fit in.
Not a billionaire. He met Alex and several other people while they were at, I want to say preparatory school or college. I can't remember.
It's a mixture. I think they all met each other
at different times.
ways.
Yeah. So that being said, he came from a very humble beginning, upper middle class, but humble beginning compared to his billionaire friends. And I mean, Lord help. This poor boy tries so desperately to fit in with all of them, and they make him the butt of every joke. He's like the complete ass until they go to the Valentine's weekend at the manor or whatever. And then that weird, as they call him, I'm not saying this because I'm a bitch, they called him this in the book, pumpkin-headed freak Adam.
I forgot about him, which is funny because they always forget about him.
They always forget about him too. But like Adam was the outcast instead of Rob, and Rob was so relieved. And that's pathetic. Like, to know that your best friends in the whole wide world are people that pick on you to the point to where you hate
and
yourself.
Exclude you. Like, they would go on trips without inviting him, but
and
tell him all about it.
They would make him the butt of every joke. And like, he has like this like psycho girlfriend. I mean,
but also though, is she even actually psycho, or is it just
Rob's
he doesn't fit in? Yeah, I think it's his perception of her, because she doesn't fit the ideal to fit in with that crowd, because she's just a normal person.
He said, and I quote, "I want someone like Jessica," which is
Jessica's
the bride to be. She's so awful. She goes on a fucking vacation to Iceland, and she calls like multiple people until she can get her fucking nails done because she's so bougie and pretentious. Like, who gives a shit about your manicure? You're in Iceland. Enjoy your vacation.
And the whole reason Alex Sable is even in the wedding was for the status of it.
Because his dad,
no one even really liked him.
His dad was the richest person they knew.
Yeah.
So out of all of them, he had the highest trust fund. Like, come on.
And he is legitimately the most stereotypical trust fund baby you can ever think of. He does everything in his power to never have to work a day in his life.
I mean, the drugs aside, like, fuck, this guy has problems.
Yes.
And so like I was saying, there are a bunch of 20-somethings who live our dream. You know, they fly around, they jet around, they do all kinds of fun shit. But their secrets, mystery, they're frenemies more so than friends. There's a dual timeline of events. And the story is pretty fascinating, but it's also honestly kind of sad.
And also, sadly, predictable.
Yeah,
it's one
a
of
little
those.
bit.
Like, that was my one disappointment with the story, was that it was kind of obvious, and I kept talking myself out of the ending because I was like, no, that's too obvious.
We'll see it. Like in my notes, I put from the lawyers to the Instagram influencers, they're the best and the brightest, at least in their own minds, and probably in the eyes of others who idolize them. And everything starts out with a suicide at the wedding, and it turns into this like twisted thrill ride of a book. And the person who died at the wedding is Alex Sable. Initially, it's thought to be a suicide, but during the wedding, at which Alex was supposed to be the best man for status only.
Yeah, not because it's actually Will's best friend.
Questions about Alex and the entire wedding party start popping up all over the place when Tyler goes to investigate with a police officer and
who's his friend.
I can't remember if he's an officer or a detective.
I think he was a detective.
He goes with this gentleman, and they're on like the scene of the crime. The crime scene's been completely destroyed. There's been like every person in the wedding party in that bathroom, along with multiple people like paramedics and police officers, etc., that did not properly secure the crime scene. So there's that problem.
And then everyone leaves before they can even be questioned.
Exactly. They start with the questioning of the bridal party, and like it's kind of really fucking awkward how everyone responds. And I'm not going to give too much away because you do need to listen to this book to form your own opinion.
Even with it being predictable, it was still really good.
Oh yeah, I have in my notes that the detective was Sean Strickland, and they try to navigate the depraved world of the rich kids and the starlets amongst this murder. And we see this world from the vantage points of so many characters. Like we said, there are 7 people in the bridal party, not to mention the detective, who isn't really all that talked about in narration, but heavily Tyler. I mean, Lulu, she went from being a nobody to a somebody, and her love life is jacked, just so we're clear.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that till you said it.
I
Her
mean,
ex tried to kill them in a plane crash.
To prove her love to him, he told her, "You have to let me crash this plane to prove that I love you." What? No.
I think a lot of what you can take away from this story, from everybody's storylines, like literally everybody's storylines,
The grass is greener somewhere else. Until you water it and then you realize your grass is way greener.
And I was gonna say something else and I lost it. When you said the grass is greener, it wiped my brain.
And like, I really found Tyler's character really interesting because he really does want to know what happened. Like, he's genuinely interested in not only doing his job, but
he gets sucked into their group.
Yeah, he gets entranced by what's going on. Like, who was Alex Sable? Who the fuck are all these people that he was friends with or allegedly friends with? And it's through all these interviews that we learn that what seems to be an inevitable group of long-term friends is instead a group of people that are better at keeping secrets than honestly telling the truth. And it's a lot of tangled, dark emotions that goes back over years. I mean, years of tangled secrets and resentments and just fucked up shit.
And at the end of the day, a group of friends sticking together when they don't really like each other.
None of them like each other. I mean, for fuck's sake, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. The groom is cheating with, like, what, the maid of honor? I mean, come on. Come on. That, and like, neither of them felt bad about it. That's what's even more messed up.
They did.
I think
I would argue they did.
To a small extent. I feel like the maid of honor, Yael, is more remorseful than the groom to be.
Well, it's important to note Yael is not from that group. She met Jessica later in life.
She met her in college, but at the end of college, and it was more so like they circled around the same group of people and they became acquaintances, and then they lived in the same town after college. And Jessica didn't really know anybody. All her friends were in LA or New York, and she was stuck in like the Midwest. So her and Yael spent a lot of time together, and then Rob is obsessed with Alex, and he has like a crazy girlfriend, or so he thinks that the girlfriend's crazy. And Lulu's ex is like trying to murder her. And then what's that girl's name? The other bridesmaid. I can't think of her name.
Maxie.
Maxie has her own list of issues. It's just like this book really dives into 7 people in a wedding party and all of their history and backstory and current story all together. And then you got this fucking journalist in the mix. And
who honestly starts falling for it all.
He gets kind of entranced by their magical web of bullshit and stupidity. And I mean, wouldn't you like to know what's behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz? Like, what's behind the curtain? I want to know. And then he finds out, and then he's like, he really does start to like question everything. And you're really not ready for what he learns. As the truth is slowly revealed, you find yourself wondering, are they really justified in their actions? Which, big spoiler, is the murder.
Mm-hmm. This is where we get into the spoiler part of the book, and that is that Alex did not commit suicide.
No.
They all murdered him and made it look like a suicide.
It was super fucking calculated. No, listen, like most things I have read or watched, I have a hard time liking fictional leads. I'm just there. Example in case Gilmore Girls. I mean, I say no more. Am I right? Am I right, Gilmore
I
Girls?
actually just was having a conversation on Facebook before we started recording where somebody said season 4 is where Rory starts to begin to get awful. I was like,
no.
Rory was always awful, but it's just more obvious after season 4.
Yeah. I mean, none of these characters are actually likable except for Tyler. So it's so surprising that I actually liked this book, but
I know.
I did.
You get enthralled with the group the same way Tyler does. Tyler becomes friends with Lulu and Maxie.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where he shows up when Maxie has a baby.
Right.
Like, he's at the hospital.
I mean, he's like, we'll get into that in a minute. That was like a whole thing. But
Literally.
I mean, you wind up hating most of the characters in the storyline, but it's so entrancing that you become conflicted almost. Like, do I continue this book because they all kind of really fucking suck? Or do I just stop here and say I wasted my time with this? Like, what do you do? For me, I finished the book. The people in this book are so absolutely despicable and unlikable, and that's almost what makes it so great. Like, kind of like with Schitt's Creek. The very first episode is awful. Okay, hear me out. I love the show. Yeah. It's one of my favorite shows in the world. However, Moira's sitting there going, don't put my wigs together. She doesn't like her. Like, oh my God, could you be more pretentious? And then, like, Alexis going, actually, that was a gift from my boyfriend. That is not your property. That is mine. Like, they're so entitled.
The very first time you rewatch Schitt's Creek
you're almost
is
like,
when you really get hit with it.
Yeah.
And because what I loved about Schitt's Creek, I know this is such a tangent, is that the character development is so subtle. That you forget how bad they were at the start until you go to that very first rewatch.
Yes.
And you're like, oh my God, how did I watch this? And I can't say the same for the characters in this book because, I mean, they get redeemable in the fact that, like, they do all get set free being away from Alex and realizing they don't need to be with Alex.
To an extent, they emotionally get set free, but, like, legality-wise, they're so fucked. I mean, the women in this book, they start out really obnoxious, and then the more the story moves along, you begin to understand their personalities a lot more, and then you sort of start to really, especially Maxie, you sympathize with them, and in the end, they still aren't exactly likable, but you get it. You understand more. The men are horrible. Alex being the monster of the book.
But everyone tried so hard to be Alex, therefore.
And the views on the women that the men have and the life that they lead suck. And Alex is the literal worst. The only issue I had with this is that the ending was a little bit of a letdown. I mean, it was anticipated more than I thought it was going to be.
I didn't expect it to be as calculated as it was because it was all the way down to pass the razor blade around like a symbolic gesture of slitting his wrists.
They really did go into it, but like it was this one portion of the book where they said a quote by somebody, I forget. And Lulu said it, and then Maxie said something, and it was just like
the quote you're talking about. The quote you're talking about is where the title of the book comes from, and it's from the poem "Lady Lazarus" by Sylvia Plath.
Yeah,
and the poem ends with "Out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air." And Maxie makes a statement of, "Now I know what it feels like to eat men like air," or something like that.
That's towards the end, but in the middle of the book, they say that poem, and they make like a reference to it, and I was like, they're not seriously going to have these women kill this dude, right? But they do, and that kind of almost makes it like shitty for me.
And I will say though,
that gave it away early on.
Yeah, but also I will say for those of you who listen to this without ever actually listening to the book, Alex at that getaway where they all got to know each other at the mansion, like not the wedding, but the first time they were there, major trigger warning. Alex raped Maxie.
However, we talked about in the synopsis how he was the witness and the one who brought down justice because he called the police on a guy who was assaulting women around their campus.
So then they kind of start putting the pieces together.
It's one of those
Alex
things that
lied.
was never actually answered. It was never actually put together in words.
It was put together in words by the fact that Alex's dad called her in after he found out she was pregnant.
But the thing is, they never had confirmation that Alex, not the other guy, was the actual assaultant. So, you know what I mean?
I think that they all had that revelation where
they figured
even
it
before
out,
he died.
but it was never confirmed because they never asked him. And that would have been something I would have liked to have seen.
I feel differently. I feel it was 100% confirmed when Maxie straight up called his dad out.
Well, when he
and
raped
he didn't
her,
deny it.
He raped her and said she was asking for it, begging.
By the way, she was married.
She was married. They went into a library to look at some book. They
went to go get something for the party or something.
They were trying to end an argument about a quote. I feel I could be way off.
It was something they were trying to go look for. I don't remember. It's been too long.
They couldn't find her, and then they
heard something.
They go upstairs and they see something on the floor outside of the library area, and then they hear things, and then they bust down the door, and then there's a very illicit, horrifying scene playing out, and it just turns into this whole fucking thing
where then everybody except for one or two people
the guy that was passed out, the pumpkin-headed Adam guy, they let him get so fucked up on mushrooms and alcohol and whatever else
that he passed out for
a
vault
for 16 hours.
And in a vault where they've been playing poker, and there's okay, bye.
And they didn't even call the ambulances or anything. That was nuts. But long story short, it's easily deduced that Alex framed some other guy for all of the sexual assaults that happened on that campus. And
let's be real.
When that guy died in prison somehow, Alex felt
he had cancer or something.
Yeah, he had intense guilt. And it's why did you have so much guilt? Oh, because he shouldn't have fucking been there to begin with. And I really sort of wanted something shocking and life-changing to happen. And with the rape scene, I feel that's kind of what happened. But I will say the one big letdown for me, aside from the middle of the book where they gave away that quote that turns into the title of the book that leads to the quote at the end of the book, when they do finally, for lack of better explanation, execute Alex Sable. When they execute him, because it was a calculated murder amongst a group of people.
Oh, all the way down to Yael's a nurse. I think we said it in the synopsis. I think it said it.
Yeah.
So they even had her.
No, I think she's a doctor, not even a nurse. I think she's a legit doctor. So.
Oh yeah, you're right. And so all the way down to her knowing the amount of medications to give him.
What medications to give him that falls in lines with his current drug addictions and partying past
dosages,
hardcore crazy, and it was a whole thing. But I almost wanted some sort of real character arc development, because they all almost stayed the same the entire book. It was really kind of pissing me off, because I wanted, after they murder a guy, to either fucking do some charity work and change the world, or change them fucking selves. I don't know. I feel if I murdered someone and got away with it, I would do something to redeem myself.
I feel to an extent though they changed. Maybe not in the redemption way, but Lulu is dating Alex's cousin, but she kind of settles down with him instead of always being in tumultuous relationships, and Maxie becomes a mom and she realizes she's unhappy in her marriage and divorces her husband.
Although let's be real, she doesn't want to divorce her man until she can prove that they were together long enough for her to get the fucking money from the prenuptial agreement. I mean, she's calculated as fuck.
Yeah.
Every character in this story is so calculated.
Which brings me, which I told you before we ever even started recording and stuff, I said what this whole story boils down to is the age-old ethics question of, is street justice justice?
Not even just that, but with Tyler, if you know something, say something, and he doesn't. That's the thing, right. Listeners. Tyler gets in on this little shenanigan bullshit.
But I will say,
and he doesn't reveal.
They were very calculated in the way they talked to him,
Yeah.
because he even said he thinks he knows what happened.
They never would like legitimately confirm it, but he never reported it to the detective he was like legitimate friends with.
Right, but at the end of the day, I think it's because he couldn't prove it, and especially when you bring in their money and stuff, there's no way
one guy could have got away with like framing 7 people. However, I will say I thought it was like really kind of like interesting in a way that they kept mentioning how Alex was such a big fan of Tyler's podcast and how he would be so honored to be on it.
I had forgotten that.
Isn't that fucked up? Like, listen, I love you, but if someone murders me, please don't cover my murder. Like, can we just not and say we did? Because, like, how fucking crazy is that?
I'm going to cover your murder, but then when I find out who the murderer is, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just joking.
No,
for the record.
She can't say anything because she would have done something. Dun, dun, dun. Just kidding. Just kidding. FBI agents that are
for
listening.
legal purposes, this is a joke.
I have really bad sarcasm, okay? But like,
and we also go into the dark humor.
I have really bad dark humor. It's like a whole thing.
It's like a whole coping mechanism.
It is a coping mechanism that I like deal with on the daily. But
I will say,
I really did enjoy this book, and I didn't think
I
was going to. And
I feel like listening to us talk about it, it sounds like we didn't. But it was actually really, really good.
It's really intoxicating. You get drawn in and you're like, nope, fuck this. I have to keep going.
Which kind of is what happens with Tyler, too. Like, it's... So, I like when writers do that where you, like, can then understand why somebody does something because it happened to you, too.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before. I can't think of what it is now.
It was probably Melanie Golding.
No, like, where you start... Where it's written so well that you start, like, sympathizing with the bad guy. The TV show You.
The TV show
there are
You,
moments
yep.
where you fall for his charm, and then you're like, no, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, Joe's a piece of shit. But
they write it so well that he's believable as a charming man.
Yeah, and it's fucking crazy because at some point you start to feel sympathy for the horrible person that he is, and you almost relate to him. And that's when it gets scary. It's like they deduce the character into such small, believable increments that you could see yourself in them. And that's what's terrifying is like, you could see yourself in Lulu with her horrible gaslit fucking relationship where I love you, fucking kill me because he's going to crash the plane regardless. What are you supposed to do? Antagonize him and make it worse?
Right, yeah.
You know, and with Alex, like, Maxie had no idea that he was a threat. She followed him into the library because they were all drinking. They made a wager, and
they knew he was annoying, but they didn't think he was dangerous.
He was crazy in a drug-addicted, loose cannon type of way, but they didn't know the loose cannon was also loaded. Like, you know what I mean?
Metaphorically speaking, not loaded money-wise.
Not like money or drugs. I'm talking like dangerously loaded. And that's the thing that really fucking sucks is they all sort of hated him, but they couldn't.
But they all felt obligated to be around him.
Not only did they feel obligated because of friendship time frames, like they've been friends with him half their lives, and his dad has so much money and he provides all the cool shit. Like they go on all these trips
and power, and his dad has power.
His dad has power, and like for fuck's sake, they're playing poker. And poor Rob is like such a shitty poker player that Alex antagonizes him to the point to where he goes, if you can beat me, I'll give you a check for $50,000 right here, right now. And he goes, okay. So if I win, you give me $50,000. He goes, yeah, I will. He goes, but what if I lose? He goes, then I'm giving it to Lulu for whatever fucking reason she wants it. And of course, because Rob can't catch a fucking break, he loses, and Alex literally writes a check to some dog charity for Lulu. And she's like, oh my God, you have no idea how much these puppies are going to appreciate it. And like, it's $50,000 fucking dollars. That's a house to some people.
And can we just also say, this is kind of random, but the two trips are a year apart.
Yeah. And
so they spent a year hating
so
Alex because they're like, well, we had to put up with him. He's in the wedding. Kick him out of the wedding.
Everything happened on Valentine's. And then the next spring, they were getting married. So Valentine's weekend, they went up to look at the potential to the groom, potential venue. But Jessica, the bride, was like, nah, this is all going to happen. And she didn't want anybody that wasn't in the wedding party to be a part of the Valentine's Day weekend. So Rob couldn't even bring his girlfriend that everybody hated, but like he also kind of hated, but
he was embarrassed by her.
Not even that, but he couldn't bring her because he wasn't allowed to have somebody that wasn't as good as them because she wasn't good enough to be a part of the wedding party. And, you know, he spent time with Alex, and at one point in the book, him and Alex are having a conversation, and Alex literally like reams this poor guy. And he's like, aren't you fucking embarrassed to be with her? Could you imagine her being your wife? And it's like, what if he could? What if he could?
Basically, Alex's opinion on everybody made them kind of self-sabotage themselves.
Well, and like, poor Alex's cousin seemed normal as shit. And so, like, what's wrong with Alex? Like, that's a whole separate question. But there was this one scene where they go on that Valentine's weekend. They want to go, like, to get Coke, which, like, whatever. And because Alex has a drug problem and he can't keep it under control. And when what's the lawyer guy's name again? I forget. My brain's broken right now.
Will.
When Will finds out that he has Coke in the car, I think he makes him like get rid of it. And so Alex is really pissed because he doesn't have his drugs. And so they find this other guy that they went to school with who happens to be a neighbor, and he happens to have Coke. And like Lulu texted this guy and she's like, we want to go skiing. And like Rob, being naive, goes, it's like negative degrees outside. What the fuck are you talking about? Why would we want to go skiing right now? And she was like, we're talking about doing Coke. But that's how like innocent almost Rob was. And she's like, God, you still call it blow? And like just stupid stuff like that. And so like they go over there and this guy hasn't seen Alex since what? College, high school, whenever this assault stuff started going down. He was really good friends with the guy that went to prison. He actually testified on his behalf, and they get into an altercation to where Alex straight up knocks this guy out into the fucking pool, and Yael has to revive him so he doesn't die. Like, that's crazy. And he still takes that guy's Coke and leaves the house.
And that's when everyone kind of started questioning Alex.
Yeah, they were just like, you literally almost murdered someone over a little bit of Coke, and him having a problem with you from like 10 or 15 years ago. He got on your nerves, so you almost killed him so you could have drugs, and the hell is wrong with you? It was just so bizarre. Like, this book is so bizarre, but it's so intriguing that you're just like, I think I have it figured out. And you probably do. Like, let's be honest, you probably do have it figured out. But you want to get to the end. You got to cross that finish line to tick it off your list, because if you're like me, you have to complete something.
Yeah.
But also, you just kind of need to know, is it as fucked up as I think it is, or is it worse?
Right.
So that's my opinion on I Eat Men Like Air.
And for the record, we don't feel they were justified. We
No,
get it,
I understand,
but it wasn't the
why-
right thing to do.
I
They could have
understand
just
why
stopped
they
associating
wrote
with
it
him.
that way. I understand
Maxie
it's-
could have pressed charges.
She could have, but she was embarrassed because she didn't want her husband to know. She said, in her own words, something along the lines of, I will be ruined in society. I will be one of them.
Yep. She didn't want the shame of it, which I get that. But at the end of the day, there was a much better route they could have taken, even if all they did was never talk to Alex Sable again in their lives.
They could have cut him from the wedding party. They could
Moved
have
on with their lives.
turned him into the police, but she would have had to have testified. It would have been like a whole thing. And
Right. I understand the not reporting. I don't understand
the
only other option being murder.
I firsthand understand the shame of assault and not wanting to press charges because it's embarrassing and it's time consuming and you're under a microscope. I get it. Full-heartedly understand. It is your right to choose what you do with your story. However, nothing justifies taking a life. Nothing justifies taking someone's life.
Self-defense.
That's a little different. Like if they come at you and you happen to find a way to knock them down before they can kill you and your children or whatever.
But there's a difference between self-defense and
self-defense
revenge.
and revenge or premeditated murder. Like there is a huge difference.
Premeditated.
Very premeditated. Like a year's
worth. It wasn't a heat of the moment. They all said, "The fuck are you doing?" and attacked him right then and there. They waited a year and planned it over the course of a year.
But even sometimes, like to get off topic, even in real life on self-defense charges, you have to really prove that you were defending yourself because you still, unfortunately, killed somebody, and that's a crime. You have to really fight and prove that you were justified in your actions to save yourself and your family, etc. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to kill people, and if you do, you have real problems, and you should probably seek some help. Please, pretty please, I beg of you, with the cherry on top of your ice cream sundae. But that's I Eat Men Like Air. Please go check it out if you want to spend your one Audible credit on a $30 book. Because holy crap.
Keep an eye out. Maybe we can find it for free again at some point. Like it'll go on sale or something.
Yeah.
I'm shocked at that price difference.
We do not currently have another book picked out yet for our next. Well, you haven't told me, but
I did.
Is it the one you're currently reading?
No.
Oh, then I forgot because I had a stroke.
It's gonna be let me find it. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager.
Oh, I haven't started that one yet. You're going to have to resend me that because I stroked out and forgot everything for like
That
2
is
weeks.
a book. That is a book I thought I predicted. Oh. And then it hit me. And I was like, oh, left field. And then it hit me again. Oh, left field. Like,
it from every twist and turn, you're like, the fuck is going on? Yeah, I'm gonna have to
I can't explain all the details of why it's the perfect book for our book club
without giving things away.
Yeah, it'll 100% give things away, but it's perfect. And I will read the synopsis for it. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Be careful what you watch for. Casey Fletcher, a recently widowed actress trying to escape a streak of bad press, has retreated to the peace and quiet of her family's lake house in Vermont. Armed with a pair of binoculars and several bottles of bourbon, she passes the time watching Tom and Catherine Royce, the glamorous couple living in the house across the lake. They make for a good viewing. A tech innovator, Tom, is powerful, and a former model, Catherine, is gorgeous. One day on the lake, Casey saves Catherine from drowning, and the two strike up a budding friendship. But the more they get to know each other, and the longer Casey watches, it becomes clear that Catherine and Tom's marriage isn't as perfect as it appears. When Catherine suddenly vanishes, Casey immediately suspects Tom of foul play. What she doesn't realize is that there's more to the story than meets the eye, and that shocking secrets can lurk beneath the most placid of surfaces.
Ooh. Sounds
so
intriguing.
Good. And on the opening page or whatever before the story starts, it says, "I think he did it, but I just can't prove it." Taylor Swift.
Nice.
Because of the song "Nobody No Crime."
Yeah.
Which is how I heard of the book, is people talking about that.
A little bit of housekeeping before we let you all get back to your regularly scheduled lives. Our next episode will be on August 5th, and it's, I don't know, Lindsay's motherfucking birthday episode. And we will be covering something fun in relation to her birthday, and
Haven't figured out what yet, but we're working on it.
Something to do with true crime and or paranormal in regards to the day she was born, like I did with mine and Ted Bundy. From there, on August 19th, we will do our very late but promised F&F for South Dakota. And in September, we will be bringing you an episode on September 2nd. To be determined. If you have any suggestions, please let a bitch know, because there's too many crimes, there's too many ghosties, and we just don't know what to cover sometimes. So reach out at gabbpodcast@gmail.com or at gabb podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and let us know what you want us to cover.
Yeah.
I mean, we are all ears. We are literally listening. I know you're listening to us, which sounds like an oxymoron, but we are listening if you are willing to talk to us. We're always here. Please, we're so lonely. But until next time, listeners, stay spooky. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement, a Fearscape Media podcast. Music by Stephen Timperley. Artwork by Laura Ramsey. Find us online at fearscapemedia.com/GABB podcast, or on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at GABB podcast, or email us gabbpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.